Lord, take me where you want me to go. Let me meet who you want me to meet. Tell me what you want me to say, and please keep me out of your way. Amen. Please be seated. I think I have mentioned to you before how I wrestle with my sermons all week long. I start usually on my day off on Monday by reading the scriptures that are appointed for the week, and then I start mulling them over, having a conversation with myself and God about what it could possibly be. And I often see a direction and I go in it. And then some weeks I see no direction. I struggle all week long. And this week was a week just like that. It seemed like I was interrupted every time I sat down to write my sermon. Someone walked in my office, someone called, something happened to interrupt me continuously this week, even more so than usual. So there I find myself at the end of the week with no sermon, nothing to share with you. And I'm wondering why that is. And then Friday night comes, and I try to go to sleep. And I fell asleep, but I did not stay asleep for long. I was awakened in the middle of the night with violent dreams, terrifying dreams, actually. For me, I don't usually have really frightening dreams. But on rare occasion, I do believe that God stirs up me at night. I think sometimes when we're in our sleep mode, we are more vulnerable and we are more open to things than we are in our waking time, because I think we put these walls up all the time. And certainly that's the case for me. So that night I was jolted out of bed with images that I found shocking and upsetting. And I knew immediately what I was preaching about on Sunday. I laid there trying to go back to sleep. I tried to put it aside. I said, no, that's not where I want to go. That's not where Jim wants to go. But I was not allowed to go back to sleep. I was up most of the night. I suddenly saw a theme in our readings today. All of them. The psalm that Fred led, particularly the letter that Fred read from James, even the Old Testament reading from Isaiah that Abby read, and then the old gospel reading, all have a theme about strangers and neighbors. Very clearly talking about the treatment of strangers and just who our neighbors were and are. The image that I could not get out of my mind Friday night and still cannot get out of my mind is the one of the little toddler, Aylin Gerdo, washed up on shore on a beautiful, pristine beach in Turkey. He died along with his mother and his 5-year-old brother. Only his father survived. And their story is a tragic one. His father, a barber in a town in Syria, had a good life until 4 years ago when the Civil War started. When their truly corrupt and evil leader would put his own desires above those of his people. And a civil war started. And as if that wasn't enough, ISIS swoops in to the vacuum. And we all know what ISIS has been doing, the horrors that it wreaks on people. So this simple man, this barber in Syria, determines that the safest thing for him to do is to take his wife and 2 toddlers onto a 12-foot rubber raft with 12 other people out onto the open Mediterranean Sea. I want that to sink in for just a second. We all live. There's toddlers in this room right now. So many of us have had toddlers. My 19-year-old was once a 3-year-old. And I would do anything to keep him safe. I always thought, what is the safest thing to do with Trip to keep him away from any danger? I cannot imagine that I would come to the conclusion that the safest thing to do was to leave my home, go to the coast, pay somebody all the money I have, leave all my worldly goods behind, and put my little family in a raft to go out at night into the Mediterranean to get to Europe. I cannot conceive of that. Yet, literally millions of people are doing that today and have been doing it for 4 years, and we've been ignoring it. Tragedy has happened before. They said this year alone, 2,800 people have drowned in the Mediterranean. But none quite like this. This image that has flooded the internet and the papers of this tiny little child still in his sneakers, washed up on shore, is one we should never get out of our minds. The Turkey army officer bending down and gently lifting him as if he was but sleeping is too heartbreaking to imagine. This father who did survive has now had to bury his entire family for his decision to take them out on the ocean, the one he felt he had no other choice but to do. And in our readings today, I'm reminded about how we are to treat the stranger. In our gospel reading, Jesus speaks sharply to the Syrophoenician woman. Why should the dogs get food before the children? A reference to Gentiles versus the Jews. Not much like the Jesus we all like to think of, right? But she snaps back at him and says, even the dogs deserve the crumbs under the table. And Jesus reflects on that and thinks for a moment and tells her that she's right. In this instance, it seems as if Jesus changes his mind. And in James, we are reminded that if we have faith but we have no works, we have no faith at all. If you just sit there and believe in Jesus, but you don't act on that, you have no faith at all. That letter slaps us right in the face. It's a twofer. Last week set us up for this. This week is the slap, I think. James is very clear about that. And in the Psalm 146, it's all about welcoming the stranger and our neighbor. Now, this is not about immigration, folks. That's a whole nother story, and it comes with its own bugaboos for sure. This is about refugees. These are about millions of people trying to save their lives, not trying to get economic increases in their annual salary. This is people simply trying to save the lives of their children. Millions of people running from a despot and from terrorists. Truly a horrible thing. And to this date, in 4 years of this conflict, the United States has only allowed 1,500 refugees from Syria into this country. That's disgusting. Only 1,500 have met our criteria. Europe is suddenly beginning to open the floodgates, but they're not welcome everywhere. In Hungary, they're putting up barbed wire fences around them. They're beating them. They're throwing rocks at them. It's horrible. Some countries are beginning to welcome them with open arms. I believe a lot of it has to do with this image that we saw last week. If we were asleep before, we are asleep no more by that picture alone. I don't know what the answer is. So often I feel like I have to have the answer for these things, and I wrestle with them. But the only way I could get myself back to sleep Friday night was to say, I don't have to have the answer. Maybe one of you does. What Christ Church should do, how we should reach out in this crisis in some way. And I'm praying and have been praying for 2 days that one of you is given the answer and comes to me, and we can share it with everyone on what we should do. But before I wrap this up, I want to tell you the story of another refugee family, a story we tell every single year. And it's all warm and glowy and full of heartfelt memories, good memories. But at the time, not so. It's about a man and a woman great with child, by the dictates of government, has to travel to another town where she gives birth in very humble circumstances. And they make the best of it. They make a little bit of a life there. And the baby's healthy and good. But then they get the warning that there's an even greater threat, that the despot in their lives wants to kill their child, indeed kill them all, and is going to kill others in the hopes of finding your child. So that father does the only thing that he knows that he can do. He packs up his little family, leaves behind their worldly goods and the little bit of life that they have made in Bethlehem, and he flees to Egypt. Jesus was a refugee. His father made the right choice and saved his life, and we're all the better for it. So when we talk about these refugees, this horrible situation in Syria and Europe and the Middle East right now, remember that your Lord was once a refugee too. Amen.